Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. Episode 119 today. And Mark, I feel like we need to talk about the sheer speed things are moving at in the AI infrastructure world. It feels like every week there's something new aiming to make it, well, easier, faster, maybe just less terrifyingly complex?
Hey, Jenny, you are asterisk not times wrong. It's moving time fast. Almost dizzying, right? It's like everyone suddenly realized that building out serious AI capabilities isn't just, plugging in a few fancy graphics cards anymore. The whole ecosystem, the plumbing underneath, it's properly intricate.
Intricate is a polite word for it. Sometimes feels more like wrestling spaghetti. Which actually brings us nicely to today's topic. I spotted a press release from NetActuate about something called Coherently AI. The headline definitely caught my eye. Cloud in a box for scalable, resellable AI infrastructure. Now that time sounds ambitious.
Oh yeah, I saw that too. Coherently AI. It's definitely one of those plays aiming high. And having NetActuate backing them is significant. You know NetActuate? They aren't exactly small players. They've got that huge global footprint. Something like over 40 data centers worldwide. So, they certainly bring the infrastructure reach to the table.
Okay, so NetActuate provides the muscle, the physical locations, the global network backbone. Got it. But what exactly times Coherently AI then? What's actually times this box?
Right, so the box isn't necessarily a literal physical shipping container, though it can be deployed on premise like in your own data center. It's better to think of it as, a pre-integrated, pre-validated stack of hardware and software. Everything is designed to work together straight out of the gate, aiming to get sophisticated AI infrastructure up and running much faster than trying to stitch it all together piece by piece.
Faster how, though? Are we talking shaving off a few days or something more substantial? Because faster can mean a lot of things in IT projects.
They're making some pretty bold claims, talking about reducing deployment time from potentially weeks or even months down to days, maybe even hours in certain scenarios, although I'd take that with a grain of salt until we see real-world proof. But think about the usual process. Racking servers, configuring complex network fabrics, installing operating systems, hypervisors, security layers, then the specialized drivers and libraries for the GPUs. It's a asterisk lot time steps, a lot of places for things to go wrong.
Okay, yeah, I can definitely see the appeal there. That initial setup phase for big tech projects can feel like wading through treacle. So, who are they aiming this squarely at? Is this for scrappy startups trying to build the next big AI? Or more for the established players?
Their main targets seem to be the bigger fish. Telecommunication companies, telcos, cloud service providers, maybe regional CSPs who want to compete with the hyperscalers, and larger enterprises. Basically, organizations that need serious, dedicated, AI compute power. Maybe they want to offer AI platform services themselves. Or they have extremely strict requirements around data security and sovereignty that make public clouds tricky.
Data sovereignty. That clicks. Especially thinking about telcos or, say, government-related enterprises or healthcare or finance. So this cloud in a box can be run entirely within their own four walls, potentially even completely disconnected from the public internet. Air-gapped?
Exactly. They specifically highlight air-gapped deployments as a key option. If you have regulations like GDPR, or just a fundamental need for total control over where your sensitive training data lives and who can possibly access it, running the whole stack yourself, completely isolated, is a major feature.
All right. So the big draws are speed of deployment and control over data location. Let's peel back the lid a bit more. What's the secret sauce here? What technology actually makes this faster deployment possible? And presumably manageable?
Okay, this is where it gets interesting from a tech perspective. A huge piece of their puzzle seems to be something they call the Global Command Manager, or GCM. Think of it as the central nervous system. Or maybe the conductor of the orchestra for the whole stack.
Global Command Manager. Sounds suitably grand. So what does the conductor actually do, asterisk, in this AI orchestra?
It automates a asterisk ton of the complex setup and ongoing management. We're talking from the bare metal up, discovering new hardware as it's added, configuring network switches and server firmware like BIOS settings, deploying the operating system, setting up the secure networking fabric, and crucially, managing the life cycle of different tenants using the system.
Tenants? Okay, hold on. Does that imply multiple different groups, maybe even different external customers, can securely share the same physical Coherently AI deployment?
Precisely. That's the multi-tenancy aspect, and it's a big part of their value proposition, especially for those telcos and CSPs. A telco, for instance, could deploy one Coherently AI system and use it to serve several of their enterprise customers, each needing their own isolated slice of AI compute power, without interfering with each other.
Isolation is definitely the key word there. How do they guarantee that tenant A can't accidentally or intentionally peek at tenant B's data or disrupt their model training? That sounds like a potential security nightmare, if not done right.
Well, that leads us neatly to the next technological pillar. Zero Trust security principles. Implemented right down at the network hardware level. They're leveraging NVIDIA's Bluefield DPU's data processing units to achieve this.
Bluefield DPUs. Okay, I've heard of those. They're like network cards that went to college and got a PhD, right? They can actually run software and processing tasks directly on the card itself, offloading the main server CPU?
You got it. So instead of relying solely on software firewalls running on the main server CPUs, which consume resources and can be a bottleneck, the Bluefield DPUs handle network traffic isolation and security policy enforcement directly in hardware. They use technologies like VXLAN tunneling to create those secure, private virtual network pathways for each tenant across the physical infrastructure.
So, let me see if I follow. The GCM acts as the policy brain, telling the system, tenant A gets this secure network segment, tenant B gets that one, and the Bluefield DPUs, distributed across the servers, act as the high-speed enforcement points, making sure data stays in its designated lane?
Chuckles. That's a great analogy. Yes, the GCM defines the rules, the DPUs enforce them at wire speed, and because it's designed with zero trust principles, it operates on the assumption that no connection, even inside the data center, is inherently trustworthy. Every connection attempt has to be authenticated and authorized based on policy. This dramatically reduces the potential blast radius if one part of the system were ever compromised.
Okay, that hardware-level enforcement sounds robust. So we have GCM for automation and management, Bluefield DPUs for hardcore zero-trust networking. What else is in the technical stack? They mentioned NVIDIA quite a bit.
Right, they're building this based on NVIDIA's reference architecture for accelerated computing infrastructure. Now, this isn't a single software component, but more like ... Think of it as a detailed blueprint or a set of validated designs and best practices defined by NVIDIA for building high-performance, scalable AI systems. It covers everything from server specs to GPU configurations to the networking fabric.
So, by adhering to NVIDIA's recipe, Coherently AI ensures that the components they integrate, the specific NVIDIA GPUs like H100s or A100s, the high-speed networking, perhaps NVIDIA Spectrum X switches, and Connect X network adapters, are all specified and configured to work optimally together for demanding AI workloads like large model training?
Essentially, yes. It takes a lot of the complex system design and validation guesswork out. NVIDIA has invested heavily in figuring out the best ways to interconnect dozens or hundreds of GPUs, how to ensure low latency, high bandwidth communication between nodes using technologies like Row over Ethernet. Coherently is effectively leveraging that engineering expertise and packaging it.
It sounds like a very tightly integrated system, heavily leaning on the NVIDIA ecosystem. Does that raise any concerns about vendor lock-in? We discussed this a bit when talking about the DPUs.
That's a very fair question, and it's definitely a point to consider. Yes, it is highly times optimized for the NVIDIA stack. You likely wouldn't be swapping in GPUs or networking gear from other vendors easily, if at all. The GCM is probably deeply integrated with NVIDIA's APIs and management tools. So you're betting heavily on NVIDIA's roadmap and pricing structure.
So the trade-off is the promised ease of deployment and pre-validated performance versus flexibility and potentially being tied to a single vendor's ecosystem long-term. That's a strategic decision potential customers would need to weigh carefully.
Precisely. It's similar in concept to buying a pre-built high-performance car versus building one from parts. You get something that's known to work well together, but you have less freedom to swap major components later. Coherently seems to be betting that for their target market, The value of getting to market faster with a robust, secure platform outweighs the desire for vendor diversity in the core AI infrastructure.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's switch gears slightly to the resellable part of that headline. What does that actually mean in practice? It sounds intriguing.
This is another potentially significant angle, especially for the service providers. Coherently apparently includes tooling within the GCM, or alongside it, that allows the owner of the system, let's go back to our telco example, to securely partition and resell unused GPU capacity to asterisk its own customers, or maybe even offer it on a broader marketplace, all under their own brand.
White labeling GPU compute time? So the telco buys the Coherently AI system, uses maybe 60% of the capacity for its internal AI projects and managed services for its key enterprise clients, and then it can essentially rent out the remaining 40% of idle GPU cycles to smaller businesses or developers, maybe hourly or on demand?
That seems to be the core idea. AI workloads, especially training, can be very bursty. You might need massive GPU power for a few weeks to train a foundational model, but then much less for running inference day to day. This resell capability offers a way for organizations to potentially recoup some of their substantial hardware investment, or even build a completely new revenue stream by effectively becoming a specialized AI cloud provider themselves.
That could be quite appealing, especially given the eye-watering cost of high-end AI hardware these days. It turns what is typically a large capital expenditure into something that could potentially generate ongoing revenues. It's like buying a big truck for your business needs, but being able to rent it out on weekends.
Right? It adds a whole monetization layer on top of just times the infrastructure. Combine that capability with the secure multi-tenancy managed by GCM and enforced by the Bluefield DPUs. You can see how they're positioning it as a complete platform, particularly attractive for service providers looking to offer AI services without building everything from scratch.
So let me recap the scenarios. If I'm, say, a large bank or a pharmaceutical company with strict data privacy rules, I could deploy this Coherently AI system entirely internally, maybe air-gapped, for my own private AI research and development. But if I'm a regional CSP or a telco, I could use this same platform to launch a suite of branded AI services, model training, managed databases, inference endpoints for my existing customer base?
That's exactly the picture they seem to be painting. Flexibility in deployment models, hosted by NetActuate in their facilities, self-hosted on-prem, potentially air-gapped, combined with the integrated tools to manage it efficiently, and, crucially, the option to monetize spare capacity.
It really feels like a direct response to that complexity challenge we started with. Instead of companies needing teams of deeply specialized network, security, and systems engineers just to build the foundation for AI, Coherently aims to provide that foundation, pre-assembled and ready to power up.
Yeah, abstracting away a lot of that low-level infrastructure setup and integration pain. Their CTO, Drew Hastings, was quoted emphasizing the reduction in the learning curve and time to market as key goals. The idea is to let organizations focus more resources on developing the actual AI applications and models, rather than spending months wrestling with the underlying plumbing.
Makes a lot of sense. We hear constantly about the shortage of engineers who can actually build, manage, and troubleshoot these complex AI hardware and software stacks. They've real bottleneck to adoption for many.
Definitely. And while there are other platforms aiming to simplify parts of this puzzle, things like Kubernetes operators for AI MLOps platforms for model lifecycle management, Coherently seems to be targeting that comprehensive full infrastructure stack, from bare metal up to the tenant-ready environment, with that strong emphasis on integrated security and multi-tenancy tailored for service providers or large private deployments.
Okay, I think I'm getting my head around the proposition. The potential benefits seem clear. Potentially much faster deployment, performance optimized around the NVIDIA ecosystem, robust security built in using zero trust and hardware enforcement, data sovereignty options via on-prem and air-gapped deployments, and this interesting possibility of white labeling and reselling spare capacity.
That's a solid summary. Speed, security, scalability, control, and monetization potential, all bundled together.
So what about the flip side? Potential downsides or challenges? We've touched on the NVIDIA lock-in.
Well, first off, it's a relatively new platform entering a complex space. Real-world performance, stability, and reliability at scale still need to be demonstrated through customer deployments. How easy is it times to manage day-to-day via the GCM once it's running. How seamless is that tenant onboarding, resource allocation, and metering for the resale aspect? Does the GCM handle OS patching, firmware updates across the stack smoothly?
And cost. Inevitably. While it aims to simplify and potentially save on integration time and specialized staff costs, I imagine the upfront investment for a Coherently AI hardware and software stack isn't going to be trivial. Calculating the TCO compared to a DIY approach or using public cloud would be complex.
Good points. The initial capital outlay is likely substantial. And regarding the resale market, how mature is that ecosystem really? Is there actually significant, reliable demand for resold GPU capacity brokered this way? Especially outside the major hyperscaler marketplaces? How would pricing, billing, and customer support for those resold services actually work? The organization buying the Coherently box takes on that service provider role.
Yeah, becoming a mini CSP, even just for GPU time, isn't without its own operational overheads. You need the right kind of customer base ready to consume that raw GPU power, and the internal processes to support them.
True. Plus, while the GCM automates deployment, you still need skilled staff to operate and maintain the system long-term, manage tenant relationships if you're reselling, and troubleshoot issues when they arise. It reduces complexity, but doesn't eliminate the need for expertise entirely.
So looking ahead, what does the emergence of solutions like Coherently AI signal for the broader market? Is this AI cloud-in-a-box concept going to become a major trend, challenging the dominance of public cloud AI services?
I think the drive towards simplification and packaging is definitely a trend. Whether it takes this specific integrated stack in a box form or others, the need to lower the barrier to entry for deploying serious, private AI infrastructure is huge. Public clouds are great, but they aren't the answer for everyone, especially due to data gravity, cost predictability concerns at scale, and those sovereignty requirements we discussed.
So, enabling more players, regional CSPs, telcos, large research institutions, government agencies, enterprises and regulated industries to build their own AI factories without needing the vast internal engineering resources of a Google, Microsoft, or Amazon?
Exactly. Democratizing access to scalable, secure AI infrastructure, particularly for private or sovereign cloud deployments, and the focus on security and data control directly addresses concerns that sometimes make public clouds a non-starter. We might see more specialized, vertically integrated solutions like this emerge, perhaps tailored for specific industries or compliance regimes.
It'll certainly be fascinating to watch how Coherently AI fares in the market and who the early adopters are. Getting those first public case studies detailing the deployment experience and the results will be really telling.
Definitely. Seeing it move from press release promises to tangible, real-world deployments handling complex AI workloads is the crucial next step. But the core concept, packaging up that immense infrastructure complexity, undeniably addresses a major pain point in the industry right now.
All right, well, consider my curiosity officially piqued on Coherently AI, a potentially valuable tool for specific types of organizations aiming to accelerate their AI journey while maintaining control. Thanks for breaking all that down, Mark.
Anytime, Jenny. It's always interesting to dig into these new infrastructure plays. There's just so much happening beneath the surface of the AI boom we see every day.
Indeed there is. Okay, everyone, that's all the time we have for episode 119. We'd love to hear your thoughts on AI cloud-in-a-box solutions. Find us on the usual channels. Until next time, stay curious.
Bye, everyone.